Okay, so I wanted to make this video to maybe share some of the knowledge that I've gathered over the last year, because I think it's healing and I feel that it's interesting and other people should know about it who maybe haven't had the opportunity that I have had to discover it on their own. So I want to do a meditation with you guys, and this is for the September 13th new moon of 2015, which coincides with a solar eclipse. And the eclipses, I found, have really affected me personally, and they sort of work like a door opening or a door closing. So I felt it was appropriate that I begin this sort of discussion on an eclipse, and also in the month of the sign of Virgo, as Virgo deals a lot with service and viewing yourself as more than one thing. The keynote of Virgo is, I am the mother and the child. I, God, I, matter, am. So for the next full moon, that might be something that you can meditate on your own. But for this meditation, I chose a different mantra or keynote to sort of think about and contemplate, because the type of meditation that I do isn't devotional where you're really clearing your mind completely, but it's more about focusing on an idea and finding the layers of meaning within that idea. And they call this meditation with seed. So the way I came up with this seed was trying to look at what is really transpiring astrologically with this eclipse / new moon that's happening. And what I found is that opposing the Virgo new moon is Chiron in Pisces. And now when you think about the signs, they are very much related, the oppositions and different levels of understanding. So I think examining Virgo and what that means, you really have to take Pisces into account as well. So Virgo is really the sign of integration, synthesis, and digestion. You know, there are some of those shadows of Virgo which deal with perfectionism. It's really a time where you're kind of letting go what's holding you back, as cliche as that sounds, but really like a purging and cleansing of things that have held you back, things that have prolonged fear. I think what is really useful in understanding is that perfection is not something that's obtained, but it's a process. And as we live our lives, we continue to perfect our skills and kind of find our gift. So Pisces, on the other hand, and Chiron in Pisces, there's a lot of similarities with those two. But think about Chiron in Pisces, and also Neptune is in Pisces right now, as sort of this ocean of consciousness, sort of like this great mysterious understanding about who or what we are. I feel like a lot of people who have Pisces in their charts, they're more creative and artistic and abstract and deep. Something to think about when you have Pisces and Chiron together, because Pisces is sort of the fish and sort of dealing with sacrifice, and Chiron is also deals a lot with sacrifice, being the wounded healer. So it also deals a lot about healing. But it's interesting to point out that the last solar eclipse that we had, which was March 20th, because there's 2 lunar eclipses and 2 solar eclipses per year, was when the sun and moon were conjunct, meaning that they were at the same degree of a certain sign, which is the case with this new moon, right at the cusp of rebirth, which is that whole Pisces Aries that sort of connotates what you think is starting anew, like the Phoenix archetype. And this upcoming solar eclipse is sort of like a close to whatever sort of happened at that point in time. So they say like a door closing or opening, and now you're entering a new cycle of that. So you might feel a little bit more completeness or conclusion to whatever might have happened in March. What was also interesting about March 20th was that Saturn was also going direct in Sagittarius. It retrograded back into Scorpio on June 15th, where it still is presently for about another week. Saturn in Scorpio, which began in 2012, October of 2012, sort of conveys that, again, those mysteries, that depth, that definitely mystery is the big word. I feel like it's one of the signs that's the most difficult to sort of pinpoint. Now we're going into Sagittarius, which is a little bit maybe lighter. Saturn first went into Sagittarius around the time of the winter solstice at the end of 2014. That whole couple of months, the first 6 months of 2015, gave you a little taste of what Saturn in Sagittarius might be like for you. Now, we'll finally say goodbye to Saturn in Scorpio in about a week, and we won't have it again for another 28 years, which is the age of someone who experiences their Saturn return, because it goes completely around the astrological wheel. So, I know that's a lot already, but I just wanted to kind of set up this conversation about the eclipse and Chiron, and again, leading up to the mantra that I chose for this meditation. Chiron, which is getting activated, being the opposition of the new moon / eclipse, is really calling out spiritual awakening, upsetting the status quo. The orbit of Chiron goes within the orbit of Saturn and beyond the orbit of Uranus. So it really creates those aha moments, because it's not so clearly defined the path that it travels. Being in Pisces, which I mentioned, Buddhist principles that talk about life as suffering, that can be more intensified with this positioning, and that might be something that's being called out during this eclipse and new moon cycle. We don't want to idealize the suffering. As much of it is a part of our existence, we want to still have fun and release that need to suffer and just live your true self. Like a Saturn return, which happens every 28 years, your Chiron return, because all of these planets are placed in your natal chart at the time of your birth. So Chiron would make its return back to the same place every 50 years. So that's sort of a time where, again, you're looking back at some of those deep wounds and challenges that maybe you never really addressed fully. So again, on a more spiritual level, this new moon / eclipse can be stirring those things up. If there's something deep down, a deep wound that you never addressed fully, it could be resurfacing that. There's a song that I was listening to today, which, when I found this mantra, made me think a lot about it, but it's Same Love by Mary Lambert, Malcolm and Ryan Lewis. And the whole phrase, "I can't change even if I tried," deals a lot with whole Serenity Prayer, which some people think about being more related with different Alcohol Anonymous groups, or what it is God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I thought that would be a really appropriate and healing mantra for this meditation. So let's jump into it. What I want you to do, if you're by yourself, you could sit cross-legged, or however you're able to get comfortable. If you're in a group, so the energy can kind of flow more freely in the room, you could kind of sit on your feet. You might want to use a pillow, just however you could kind of relax and get the most comfortable. And close your eyes. So I want you to really focus on your breath. And when you take your next inhalation, think about you being filled with that love and that spirit of love and being divine. I want it to be a nice, long, full breath that lasts for about 4 seconds. And then I want you to hold it for 4 seconds. And then another 4 seconds for the exhale. And then you're going to hold the exhale for another 4 seconds. So this is called a 4-count breathing exercise, which will really just help you relax and kind of calm your physical body, which then in turn will help calm your emotional or astral body and your mental body, etc. So try and get comfortable, close your eyes, and we're going to really start to concentrate on that 4-count breathing exercise. I want you to also pay attention to your posture. Try and make your spine more erect, and also bring your chin down a little bit so the back of your neck is sort of more pointed up, but not, your chin doesn't have to be all the way to your chest, but whatever's comfortable, but just try to keep some straight posture and maybe rock your hips back and forth a little bit until you get really comfortable in your seat. I want you to take, and then we're going to do 3 ohms. Now, the ohm is related to consciousness in the head. So when you take the ohm, I want you to sort of visualize it coming in through the top of the head and then reverberating in your throat. Now the ohm is sort of the annihilation of time and space, and it's really connecting us back to that source when we say it. As we continue our meditation, I want us to focus again on our breath and take a second to visualize in your heart center the blossoming of an etheric blue lotus flower. And once you visualize this, I want you to sound the Om softly to yourself, and then raise that consciousness of that blossomed lotus flower to your third eye. And at that moment, I want us to really contemplate the Serenity Prayer, which we're going to use as our seed thought. And we're going to think about this for about 5 to 7 minutes. And in this, try and discover all the different layers of meaning. And that might be something to discuss later if you're in a group, or to journal about yourself if you've come to any conclusions or realizations about it. So let's all focus, close our eyes, focus again on our breath, and visualize that blossoming of that lotus flower. And then we're going to contemplate the following mantra. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, if that's too much for right now, too much to focus on, if you have trouble concentrating, I want you to really just focus on your breath. And then if you want to focus on an object, like an apple, and think about everything to deal with an apple: the taste, the touch, the smell, the color, the reflection on the skin, all down to the detail, and just focus on that. If you don't want to focus on the Serenity Prayer, or if you want to practice on your visualization, you can picture a golden circle in your mind or in front of you with your eyes closed, and focus on it for about a minute, and then have it set sort of like the sun and take it out of your consciousness so there's just emptiness for maybe about 30 seconds, and then raise it back up and then focus again on that consciousness. Okay, the dogs are fed. I think I just heard them again outside the door, but hopefully they won't bother us completely again. Although, like I said, we are supposed to contemplate being of service to others this month. So, maybe if I let him in here, he won't bother us. Chip! Lay down. Foxy, lay down. No, Foxy. Lay down, Chew. Lay down, Foxy. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. How are you all wet? Lay down. Stay. I don't advise meditating with animals. You really want to find a space where it's quiet and you could relax and you don't have distractions. So I might just have you guys do that on your own with the mantra and kind of discuss some of the other things I wanted to about this time, and talk a little bit about a little bit more about Saturn, and also about Venus, which is making 3 different conjunctions with Jupiter this year, which rarely happens. The last times that happened were in 1991 and then again in 1967. 2 years where they talked about there being a ton of radical creativity in the artistic and musical realm. So we'll see what sort of happens the second half of this year. Let's pretend we're ending our meditation with seed with another 3 ohms, which are a little elongated as being more Tibetan Buddhist Om styles, with the Om Ah Hum Ma. And the Om is associated, like I said, with the crown chakra. And we say Ah, and this is related to our throat and how we express ourselves, our intelligence as divine beings. The Hum, and that sort of more is associated with the heart and certain undeniable truths. Being love and living as a soul. And then the Ma as clearing the energy and kind of closing the meditation. Like I said before, when you say the Om, And when you breathe in, sort of visualize breathing in spirit and love. And on the exhale, visualize empowering your fellow men who are living as souls and living for the service of others and empowering them. So, like I mentioned, this month, there's a lot of themes dealing with service and being selfless is a really important aspect of that, because if you think about the world as being complete whole and there being two different types of forces, good and evil, being selfish is more along the lines of being evil. So when you live your day to day and you want to meditate in the morning, preferably, unless it's a full moon and you're using a full moon mantra, you want to sort of embody those principles with you throughout your day. And being group conscious is just a big part of understanding self, because self is really an illusory sort of thing, and nothing is existing on its own, and it's all interconnected. So now I want to kind of discuss some of the other astrological and planetary things happening right now that I thought were kind of interesting, that I wanted to share with you in regards to Venus, and also I know we touched upon Saturn, but that to a degree as well. So Venus, like our new moon cycle, which happens every, the lunar cycle lasts about 2 weeks. A Venus cycle lasts for about 584 days. And we just started a new one in the archetype of Leo because she emerged as the morning star in the sign of Leo. So we sort of think about that archetype. This past Capricorn Venus cycle started in January of 2014, and if these cycles form a 5-pointed star, if you look at them from above, and they repeat every 8 years. So this last Capricorn cycle, which just closed, happened again in January of 2006. So some of those things that were stirred up over the last 2.5 years was happening 8 years ago prior. So certain things that maybe if you didn't fully embody those events and breakthroughs fully, this is another opportunity to deal with those and face those. So that being said, this new Leo cycle that we're entering happened August of 2007. So if you want a heads up on what might happen energetically in the next couple months, that all happened previously, just with Venus, summer of 2007. So just to note. Now, this whole cycle, there's a lot of mythology behind it, mainly around the Sumerian goddess Unana, who makes her journey into the underworld to go to the funeral of her sister's husband. And her sister was queen of the underworld. Now, when you see the crescent moon conjunct Venus, this is supposed to be her descent into the underworld, and it happens 7 times. And it's her losing one personal item, which is affiliated with each of the chakras. So upon the first descent, she loses her crown, and then on the third descent, she loses her necklace, and it goes through all the chakras. Now, this last cycle sort of culminated where she lost all of her power around September 2014. It lasts for about 60 to 90 days, so we didn't see Venus at all in the sky until December 6th of 2014. So that whole period between mid-September to early December, she was in the underworld. And we also had some eclipses that time, so it might be interesting to see kind of what was happening in the month of October. That was very transformational for me. Then in early December, she began her descent. So we saw her as the evening star, whereas when she's descending into the underworld, you see her as the morning star. So we just had the interior conjunction where it's when she's not in the underworld, but we still can't see her, and this sort of initiates a new Venus archetype, being in Leo. And Venus as a morning star is more about going after what we feel we're worth and what we desire, whereas when she's the evening star, it's more about synthesizing and harmonizing with others. But it all kind of deals with love in a lot of ways. Venus in Leo and those conjunctions that she had with Jupiter in Leo made some squares with Saturn and Scorpio. And I mentioned earlier that Saturn retrograded back into Scorpio mid-June and then went direct in Scorpio August 3rd, around that time, which is when we had these squares with Venus in Leo, and those are sort of unfavorable placements, so they're sort of more difficult times typically. And some of the advice, if you haven't had a chance to really think and work out what maybe happened that time, or if that's still with you, is kind of along the lines of the mantra for the meditation that we did, is to really release yourself of suffering that is sometimes self-inflicted, and it's letting go of the things that paint a distorted image of yourself and your self-worth, and comparing yourself unfairly to other people. Those are just some things to sort of think about. And Saturn is going to be leaving Scorpio for 28 years, the end of this week, which is a sigh of relief for some people, including me. And what I want us to think about for this next Venus cycle is really going after what we feel we're worth and what we desire, and right now, because Venus was retrograding, that sort of started the end of July, and she went direct on September 6th in Leo, and now she's going to go back through the shadow periods. That's kind of resurfacing all of the things that happened end of July, early August also, and that's going to be with us until October 9th, which is when she enters Virgo and sort of treads on new ground that she didn't get quite to before she started her retrograde. So, lots to think about, lots to contemplate, and I really hope this was helpful for you guys. It was a pleasure sharing some of this knowledge with you guys, and I truly wish you all the best and to really live your life with your mind open and your heart open, and be conscious of others and in your day-to-day, and to really appreciate your life and the things that you have, and just pay attention to the subtle signs, because you never know what might be being pointed out to you that if you don't get it the first time, it's going to come back again, either 2 weeks later or 8 years later. So, yeah, I wish you all the best. Lots of love. I just want to do one full meditation for you guys, regardless of all the other stuff I kind of went over. So this is a little easier to follow along with if you're trying to do this on your own. So, quick recap. We're going to focus on our breath. 4-count breathing exercise, so 4 seconds. Take a full breath, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold that exhale for 4 seconds. Now, once you have that down, I want you to sort of make sure you're comfortable, close your eyes, kind of repeat that breath pattern, and then we're going to say our ohms, and we're going to visualize the blossoming of our etheric heart center, raise that consciousness to our third eye, and then focus on the mantra, which I'll repeat. We'll do that for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then our om, humas. Okay, so let's get comfortable. Make sure we have our posture and our spines erect. Tilt your chin slightly forward so the top of your spine is sort of up. I want you to take a nice full breath, count to 4 to yourself. And hold it for 4 seconds. Now exhale, complete full exhale over 4 seconds. And then try to wait another 4 seconds before you take a new breath. So let's take one new full breath in together. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds and then start our ohms. As we continue our meditation, I want us to focus again on our breath and take a second to visualize in your heart center the blossoming of an etheric blue lotus flower. Let's start focusing on our heart center. And as we take those breaths in, we're going to hold them, and as we exhale, we're going to visualize that lotus in the heart starting to blossom like a swirling etheric blue flower. Now I want to raise that consciousness up to our third eye, and we're going to focus our thoughts on this single passage, the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And sort of close our meditation, and then say our Oma Humas. And as we do that, I want us to visualize breathing in the spirit and life and energy of our group of goodness and goodwill. And then on the exhale, when we do our Oma Humas, think about breathing the life into the people who are actively engaging in goodwill and providing service for others. So, that was a short recap. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for listening.